Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Right Honorable Tunis Sidi Mohammed, Honorable Wase Ahmed Idris, Honorable Sani Malam Shaibu Bukari, Honorable Ibrahima Memunatu, Honorable Adja Pinto Satu Kamara, Honorable Abiante Awaji Inobek Dagome, Honorable Abdulaziz Ayaba Musa, Honorable Adamu Abdu, Honorable Adeyemi Smart, Honorable Adu Johnson Kwaku, Honorable Afenyomakin Alexander Kwamena, Honorable Agbandao Kuno Nau, Honorable Ayi Samson, Honorable Aka Hervé, Honorable Akwashiki Godia, Honorable Alimikina Francis Asikame, Honorable Alipui Sinanu Koku, Honorable Ameyao Chereme Kwasi, Honorable Asin Eme, Honorable Awuyo Ibrahim Usman, Honorable Ayamba Ladi Ayi, Honorable Ayariga Mahama, Honorable Bako Nasiru Arifari, Honorable Balarabe Abdullahi Salame, Honorable Balogun Adebayo, Honorable Bangura Muhammad, Honorable Baro Keba K, Honorable Bezra Emmanuel Kwesi, Honorable Bolovi Patrick Kojovi Senam, Honorable Borofis Robert Ajayi, Honorable Buka Lamine Fugu, Honorable Boacha Emmanuel, Honorable Khalifa Seidi, Honorable Chuba Ikweazo Linda, Honorable Kulibali Ajaratu Traore, Honorable Darbo Alaji S, Honorable Daoudou Bashir, Honorable Diaz Armando Correa, Honorable Jibo Ali Amadou, Honorable Ego Emmanuel Ogene, Honorable Ezenwa Francis Onyiwechi, Honorable Fanny Musokura Chantal, Honorable Fernandez Gabriela Alfredo, Honorable Gabatawa Nasiru Abdua, Honorable Bocho Marcel Mone, Honorable Gobir Ibrahim, Honorable Azume Hippolyte Nugono, Honorable Idiango Usman, Honorable Isa Murtala, Honorable Isa Salifu, Honorable Isa Mayaki Ramnantu, Honorable Diallo Samba, Honorable Kaipe Jonathan Lombard, Honorable Kamba Abdullahi Umar, Honorable Kolawo Letaiwo Musibo, Honorable Kone Nyakajomo, Honorable Kumwe Konarene, Honorable Amina Sa Emerson, Honorable Lopez Manuela Nascimento, Honorable Masakwa Clarence Kortu Momolu, Honorable Mede Ganfagla Sidami Romarik, Honorable Michelia Haruna, Honorable Mustafa Olali Khan Ramoni, Honorable Ndoye Suleiman, Honorable Ndume Mohamed Ali, Honorable Njai Fatmata, Honorable Odebi Tolopi Akinremi, Honorable Ogba Obina Joseph, Honorable Okejev Emmanuel Yiza, Honorable Olujimi Biodun Christine, Honorable Ono Sandy, Honorable Pereira Diaz Orlando, Honorable Rosa Lopez, Honorable Rosario de Brito Nelson, Honorable Sahabi Alaji Yao, Honorable Saidu Alkali, Honorable Sako Mamadou, Honorable Salam Bamidele, Honorable Saleh Gabriel Zok, Honorable Saleh Ibrahima Baba, Honorable Sama Shaka Musa, Honorable Sankara Abdullahi Danladi, Honorable Santos Tavares Carlos Alberto Dos, Honorable Sar Wurai, Honorable Sisse Veronica Kadi, Honorable Sarion Aja Fata, Honorable Snow Jr. Edwin Melvin, Honorable Suarez da Costa Isa Filomena Pereira, Honorable Soklingbe Senu, Honorable Sila Adama, Honorable Taiwo Oluyemi Adewale, Honorable Tunkara Bileji, Honorable Umeuji Michael, Honorable Vilan Abdullahi, Honorable Yusufu Abdurrahman Ibida Noum, Honorable Zago Stephen G.H. Mr. Speaker, the list is exhausted. The female parliamentarians are still in their meeting and will join us very soon. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. SG. Okay. Honorable members, pursuant to Rule 71, Paragraph 2 of Rules of Procedure, Parliament always has the requisite number to deliberate and settle its agenda. On this note, the agenda for today's plenary sitting, Saturday, 9 December 2023, is devoted to the following items. 1. Parliamentary workshop organized by the Parliament in collaboration with the West African Tax Administration Forum, WATAF, on the role of parliamentarians in revenue mobilization in post-COVID-19 era. 2. Presentation of the interim report of the ad hoc committee on recruitment and sensitization campaign funds. Honorable members, distinguished colleagues, before I give the floor to the West African Tax Administration Forum, WATAF, I would like to, in accordance with the provisions of Rule 58 of the Rules of Procedure, propose an amendment to the work program of our ordinary session as follows. Monday, 11 December 2023, consideration and adoption of the report of the Standing Ad hoc and Joint Committee on the report of the oversight missions. As a reminder, presentation of the country report followed by debate was scheduled on the work program for Monday, 11 December 2023. However, all country report has been exhausted. Consequently, I now submit this proposal to the plenary for adoption. Adopted. The proposal, the amendment to allow us to adopt the country report. Sorry, no country report, oversight. Adopted for Monday. Thank you. However, having said that, I now give the floor to the representative of WATAF to make their presentation, after which we will proceed with debate. WATAF, you have the floor. I would like to remind you of the provision of 105, paragraph 1 of the Rules of Procedure, and I quote, Parliament strives to develop cooperation with other parliaments, interparliamentary institutions, development partners, and non-governmental organizations. Thus, in accordance with the provisions of the rule of, quoted above, I wish on behalf of all of you and on my behalf to welcome the parliamentarians delegation of WATAF for the procedure. The provisions of the Rule 84 of our rules will be applied. We'll therefore have a joint discussion on the items. Having said that, I now give the floor to the representative of WATAF to make their presentation, after which we will proceed with debate. Thank you. You may proceed with your presentation.
The President of the ECOWAS Parliament, the heads of the specialized committees of the Parliament, honorable members of the ECOWAS Parliament, the Acting Secretary General of the ECOWAS Parliament, the Executive Chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, Nigeria, represented here this morning, the Director of Customs and Domestic Taxes at the ECOWAS Commission, esteemed colleagues who are here this morning, I say good morning to you all. And Mr. Speaker, I express our heartfelt appreciation of the opportunity you have given us for the second time to address the Parliament. Last year we were given same opportunity to talk with distinguished parliamentarians from West Africa. And this year we are back again to sensitize and to bring us to speed on recent developments in the tax landscape that we think as parliamentarians we need to be cognizant of. And we also want to express our appreciation to the Honorable Speaker also for allowing your representative to be with us in Cape Verde in September when we had our annual high-level policy dialogue in Cape Verde. Today we will be going through a session on emerging global tax issues and challenges of mobilizing domestic revenue for development in West Africa, with a focus on the new global tax rules. Ever since the last time we met, a lot of issues have come on the table. We've had issues in terms of challenges in raising and mobilizing domestic resources that we need to fund our development in West Africa. There has been conversation around the issue of the taxation of the digital economy, an area that most of our countries have not actually been doing well in terms of retaining the revenue that we need to fund our development. These and many other issues are going to be talked about this morning in order to sensitize us on the very important role we play as parliamentarians in the area of public finance management, and then in the area of providing the needed support in terms of putting in place sound legal support for tax administrations in West Africa. We sincerely believe that with your support, our countries can be funded from the resources which are locally available in our respective countries. And we are eager and happy that you have recognized that fact by allowing us to be here. We want to partner with the parliament to make sure that we work together and be able to foster a culture that will sustain our ability to sustainably fund our development with our own money in Africa and especially in West Africa. And I have with me this morning a couple of colleagues cutting across the area of tax administration from the ECOWAS Commission. I have the representative of the Executive Chairman, Federal Inland Revenue Service, Nigeria. He sent his apology, he couldn't make it. But he has sent us a representative, Mr. Femi Olarinde, will be making a remark on his behalf. And then we also have the Director of Domestic Tax and Custom ECOWAS Commission, Mr. Temture, who has been a long-standing partner with us on this work. He's also here. He will be delivering his remarks in a short while. And then we will yield the floor back to the our host, our chief host, the Honorable Speaker, who will also give us a short remarks. And then after that session, we will go into the business of the day. As I wrap up my welcome remark, I want to say we are happy and glad that you have given us audience. And I can assure you that this session will be something that will interest you, and we will be here to provide answers to various questions that you may have in mind, so that together we can put our countries on the path of sustainable economic development. Thank you, Mr. Honorable Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to introduce my team. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, good morning, honorable members of the parliament. I would like to, the Executive Secretary of West Africa Administration Forum, I would like to stand on the protocol that he has established here this morning while I give the address by the Executive Chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service. Honorable members of parliament, distinguished guests, and esteemed participants of this workshop. The Executive Chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service sends his due apology. He had to travel out of town for another very important occasions which actually needs his presence, and that is why he's not here. He has sent me. I am his technical assistant on tax policy, and being as crucial as this event is, speaking about tax policies, and that is why he has asked me to be here this morning. My name is Olufemi Olarinde, and I will give his remark quickly. It is indeed a great honor to address the parliament at this time, especially the opportunity to bring the issue of taxation to the forefront of discussion at the ECOWAS parliament, which we know that the discussion here will trickle down to the different parliaments at our respective countries. I am honored to welcome you to the parliamentary workshop on emerging global tax issues and challenges of mobilizing domestic revenue for development in West Africa, with a focus on the new global tax rules. This workshop comes at a crucial junction as we witness the significant developments in the global tax landscape, particularly with the ongoing discussion at the OECD and the recent vote at the United Nations. It is imperative for all stakeholders, especially African countries and the Global South, to actively engage in these discussions and ensure that our voices are heard in shaping the new global tax rules. As the Executive Chairman of the FIRS, I recognize the importance of international cooperation in addressing the challenges of taxation in our interconnected world. The recent vote at the United Nations on resolution to establish an intergovernmental body on tax matters is a significant step towards ensuring that developing countries have a seat at the table in shaping global tax rules. It is essential for African countries and the Global South to actively participate in these discussions and advocate for fair and equitable tax policies that promote sustainable development in our region. The role of the ECOWAS Parliament in this discussion cannot be overstated. As a regional body, the ECOWAS Parliament has a crucial role to play in advocating for the interests of the West African countries in the formulation of the new global tax rules. It is imperative for us all to work together as a region to ensure that our concerns and priorities are effectively communicated and addressed in these discussions. Nigeria has been in the forefront of the discussion both at the OECD and at the United Nations. Based on our experience, and we had to push for more inclusion and at the United Nations. And we have also supported in developing rules for the African Tax Administration Forum, which has also been championed both at the different fora. The African Tax Administration Forum has developed a model for global countries, including those in West African region. The model emphasizes the importance of fair and equitable policies that support sustainable development and economic growth in the African region. The model provides a framework for addressing the challenges of mobilizing domestic revenue for development in West Africa and offers valuable insight into the implication of the new global tax rules for the region. By supporting and promoting the ETAF model, the ECOWAS Parliament can contribute to creating a more transparent, fair, and efficient tax system that fosters sustainable development in West Africa. Today's workshop provides us with an opportunity to delve into the emerging global tax issues and explore the challenges of mobilizing domestic revenue for development in West Africa. We will also focus on the implication of the new global tax rules for our region. I urge all participants to actively engage in the discussion, share their experiences, and contribute to the collective understanding of this critical issue. We believe that this workshop will avail the parliamentarians the opportunity to understand the issues at hand and to lend their support to moving the tax rules up. I am confident that the workshop will provide valuable insight and foster meaningful discussion on the evolving tax landscape. Together, we can work together, creating a more transparent, fair, and efficient tax system that supports sustainable development in West Africa. Once again, I extend my warmest welcome to you all, and I look forward for productive and enlightening deliberation during this workshop. I thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak here once more, and I bid you a good deliberation. Thank you very much for listening.
Honorable Président du Parlement de la CEDEAO, Honorable Président.
The Honorable Speaker of the ECOWAS Parliament, Honorable Chairman of committees, Honorable members of the ECOWAS Parliament, the representatives of the Executive Chairman of the Federal Inland Revenue Service, the representative of the Executive Secretary of WATAF, the Secretary General of the ECOWAS Parliament. I'd like to express my honor this morning to be before you in this August Assembly to discuss on the international community taxes. Permit me, on behalf of the President of the Commission, Dr. Toure, and the Commissioner for Economic Affairs, Madam Lasanje Toure-Isse, to express my gratitude to the Honorable Speaker of the Parliament for all the conveniences given to us here at the ECOWAS Parliament to examine the community text that we have before us. Mr. Speaker of the Parliament, honorable members of Parliament, you would remember that only this year the ECOWAS Commission presented before you a dozen of community texts on fiscal text on normalization and cooperation on fiscal matters among member countries. I'd like to salute the seriousness and the thoroughness with which the honorable members here present peruse this matter and guided members of the Commission to come up with an excellent document which was recently adopted by the Council of Ministers in Bissau in July 2023. Amongst this text is a very important one, which is a supplementary act on mutual administrative assistance on tax matters. You would remember that during our discussions with the honorable members of Parliament, it became critical that the ECOWAS member states should begin to collaborate veritably to share information that could help the administration to acquire reliable data that they would use in assessing multinational companies within our sub-region. I'd like to tell you that ECOWAS is on top of its game in this matter, and thanks to the various resolutions by you in May, this has made ECOWAS to today be at par with the international community on fiscal matters. And that said, I am not going to take too much time as I reiterate and reaffirm our willingness at the Commission to keep the Parliament of ECOWAS abreast of all matters of international fiscal or tax-related matters, and every tax-related matters that could encourage member states to collaborate to help themselves and to work together towards ensuring that all the multinational companies that come to our sub-region do not take advantage of our sub-region as a tax haven. So I'd like to thank the vigilance of members of the ECOWAS Parliament and to reaffirm the availability of the Commission to always share relevant information with the ECOWAS Parliament to help it in its decision-making process, because this will help to improve our activities and to also ensure that the administration will recover maximum tax revenues which will be used in developing our sub-region. We are going to work with the member states to ensure that they come up with very efficient tax systems and share necessary information with them to enable them to secure the necessary revenues for the development of our sub-region, and that right processes are put in place. With that said, I would like to congratulate the WATAF Secretariat, which has been working with the ECOWAS Commission for over 10 years, and to thank them for also making this interaction with the ECOWAS Parliament possible, and to also salute the honorable members of Parliament on all their efforts on tax-related matters, and to tell you that ECOWAS will continue to support the member states to help them improve on taxes so that we can make maximum gains from taxes and public finance in our member states. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much.
Bonjour, chers collègues.
Good morning, dear colleagues. Let me start by thanking the ECOWAS Parliament for having invited us, and thank WATAF for having selected us to present this topic on current issues relating to international taxation.
No. The plan. The first. Before. Okay, good. Merci.
Well, we have an outline for the presentation based on 3 points. First, the current landscape of international taxation tax system, challenges and impact of reforms for the ECOWAS countries, and the recommendations that WATAF proposed. Now, on the current landscape of international taxation, we have made a number of observations which could have a damageable impact on ECOWAS member states, and for which it would be important to come up with solutions. One of those first observations is the imbalance in the attribution of taxation rights. When I talk about taxation rights, I'm talking about taxation agreements. And when you talk about tax agreements, the country of residence must impose a tax as well as the source country. So how are those rights established if we base ourselves on the current rules relating to taxation agreement that are established by developed countries, and namely the OECD countries? Because we have noted that there is attribution by default of tax rights to countries of residence, and countries of residence are usually the developed countries. So the more they benefit from tax rights, the more the source countries, that is countries that are members of the ECOWAS territory, the less they will have the possibility to impose tax. So that imbalance exists and calls for some questions. The other element, another element in that imbalance is in fact related to indirect transfers on mining titles, because we have a lot of companies in the sub-region operating in the mining sector, in the sector of hydrocarbons, and very often those mines are located in our countries, be it in Senegal or in Nigeria or in Togo. And how is it that how is come that when two companies that are located abroad provide handover shares? And if they base ourselves on the agreement that exists, Article 6 says that shares are liable to taxes from the country which sold. So if that country of residence is a developed country and the two countries are out of the ECOWAS region, necessarily there will be a tax. The surplus value that is obtained will go to the country of residence, while those who give value to these shares is the borehole or the mine that is in Nigeria or Senegal. It means that there is a need to have at our disposal rules that will enable us to take it that if the value of shares is drawn from the mine, there is a need to, for that surplus value to be allocated to the source countries, that is to us. The other element which is also important in allocating tax rights is the tax rates. If you take passive income, Article 10, Article 11, Article 12 of an agreement model, it is normally one should not go beyond a rate of 10%. But when you are negotiating, it is your sovereignty which is at stake. So you should not be limited in your rights to impose taxes. Another element which is a major concern also is the distribution of benefits that are attributed, because when there is a company, for instance, which is not physically present in Senegal or in Nigeria, and which which operates in Nigeria, then Nigeria should be in a position to impose taxes on benefits that are obtained on its territory. So it is necessary for those benefits to be based on the principle of full competition, because if they were independent companies, what sort of taxes would be imposed to those companies? But in countries of the sub-region, there are difficulties to implement the principle of full competition, because there is nothing to compare with that, and the capacities are not also at a very high level. Now, that is why it is important also to adopt reforms to change this provision. And it has also been noted that still, in relation to the distribution of benefits, 29% of benefits are located in investment areas, while those investment areas, those investment zones, only devote 4% of the shares and 15% of the wage bill, which means that income are located in countries where the tax is very low or doesn't exist, even though the activity takes place somewhere else. So it is necessary to restore the right of the country to impose taxes for such activities. Now, currently, there are new rules that are being introduced, namely the rule for the attribution of benefits, which is known as Amount A. What is the objective of that? Because we always have companies that operate in our sectors. Let us take, for instance, a company like Google or Netflix or Amazon. But they sell services in countries, in African countries, in the ECOWAS region. But if they do not have a physical presence in that area, in our countries, so how can we impose taxes to them? That is why this new rule was introduced, to be able to impose taxes to enterprises that are not, or companies that are not physically present where they make benefits. And this is what we call the Amount A, with the rule of the connection, which will be developed by my colleague Tala too, and she will talk about it in depth. Now, the part of that rule, if it is implemented, is that you have to do away with all unilateral measures. When I talk about unilateral level, I talk about the tax on digital services applied by some states, and we should commit ourselves not to create other similar tax in future. And this is, in fact, the counterpart that was signed by many countries, and namely the ECOWAS countries, during the October declaration of the OECD in 2021. Another element is to ensure
J'ai tantôt parlé de la rationalisation.
I talked about difficulties linked to comparisons in relation to transfer prices, but there is a new rule that is being introduced that is called Amount B. And the objective of that rule is to simplify the rules of transfer pricing and to also rationalize the transfer prices. There is also a tax that was introduced, which is called global minimum tax. You may have heard about it. And according to that tax, a company, whatever its situation, should not pay a tax which is lower than 15%, whatever the place it is operating from, because those are companies which have consolidated turnover of 150 million euros. Those will be under the GLOBE rule. And that GLOBE rule is not a minimal standard. It means that states are not really compelled to have it in their legal provisions, but by not having it, you expose yourself to certain risks that you need to take into consideration. It is based on two rules. You have the rule on income inclusion and the rule on insufficiently tax payments. Now, it means that when there is an entity which did not impose taxes to the tune of 15%, for instance, in Senegal, and which is depends on a firm established in France, France can claim the 15% that Senegal didn't take. So if you don't impose that tax, you transfer your tax right to another country. If the subsidiary is in English and the is in ECOWAS, and the rule of impose insufficiently paid tax payment is a way of deducting the same amount. It is a protective law. Now, on these new rules that exist, what are the challenges and what would be the impact of these reforms in the ECOWAS countries? Now, on the amount A, on the A amount, there are some risks involved, and those risks will particularly impact on some countries such as Nigeria, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, because in fact to be able to benefit from that amount A, there is a need for some countries whose GDP is not more than 40 million. The company should offer services amounting to 250,000 euros in your country. And if that country has a GDP which is higher than 40 million euros or dollars, then under such circumstances, it is the company, you need to have a level of sales of 1 billion. But it is extremely difficult, 1 million euros, sorry. It is difficult for a company to sell 1 million euros worth of goods in Cote d'Ivoire without being physically present. The same applies to Ghana, the same applies to Nigeria. So the threshold is very high at this level, and probably some countries may not benefit from that amount, even if Nigeria raise some reservation. Another point that needs to be taken into account is that if indeed you have that level, if those companies make sales and do not have taxes at the level of amount A, while local companies offering the same services are pay taxes to the level of A, it creates competition that could not be to the benefit of ECOWAS countries. Now, there is a withdrawal of unilateral measures that will also have negative impact on countries that are members of the ECOWAS region, but my colleague Talatu will dwell on that because my time was reduced to 30 minutes, so I must be brief and to the point. Now, on the GLOB rules that we call the global minimum tax, one should understand that I explained earlier on that if a company, for instance, a company which is located in our ECOWAS region does not apply the minimum tax rate of 15%, it is the mother company that will take benefit from it. So nowadays, are there any multinational companies that have their headquarters in our ECOWAS space? Well, there are hardly any. It means that we member countries of the ECOWAS space have no interest in implementing this inclusion rate because we do not host mother companies. So it means that there should be other alternatives, other openings that we need to take into consideration as being priority for us. Another element that we need to take into account, we talked about the effective tax rate of 15%, and this effective rate is the ratio between taxes that have been paid and the benefits obtained. But in our space, the lower the tax, the less the tax rate will be high. So that is why we need to review our tax incentive policies, because we offer a lot of tax incentives, and by offering those tax incentives, we reduce our effective tax rate, and this could expose us to a level that is lower than 15%, and in such cases, we may be transferring our tax rates and losing twofold. We would lose because of the tax incentive that we provided, but we would also lose because we did not have the possibility to get an additional tax revenue, because that will be taken over by another country. So it is necessary for us to review our tax rates and to review our tax incentives, incentive policies. On the imbalance in tax rights, it is important nowadays for us, for our states, to adopt tax agreement models that tally with the ECOWAS model. It is a model that meets all minimum standards and includes even provisions on the natural resources. So it is important for us as member states of ECOWAS, it is for us to take stock of that model to be able to negotiate minimum agreements, future agreements. And another element is that we should ensure that we follow the minimum standards on fiscal transparency, and we should be in line with all those standards. And it is important for our countries that are members of the inclusive framework to be able to sign the multilateral convention for the implementation of rules relating to tax convention to prevent transfer of benefits and too low levels of taxes. 4 countries have not yet signed: Benin, Nigeria. Nigeria signed but has not yet ratified, Liberia as well, Cape Verde and Togo, and those countries have every interest in signing the convention, the multilateral convention for tax measures. It is also necessary for us to be able to renegotiate or denounce the conventions that are negative for us, because there are conventions for which taxes are exclusively reserved for residents, countries of residence. Senegal suffered from it because we had a convention with Mauritius, and when you go to Mauritius, there was no company that had any of any economic substance there were post office box companies, and we denounced the tax convention to be able to renegotiate it if necessary. Now, recommendations of WATAF, and this is the last part of the presentation. Now, about the, on the recommendations, we first of all, call on countries, countries which want to implement these rules, these GLOBE rules, to start by identifying the companies that are under their jurisdiction and which could potentially be concerned by these GLOBE rules. That is, enterprises which have 750 million consolidated amounts of turnover and which are operating under their jurisdiction or have subsidiaries in their jurisdictions. And we also recommend that the policies, tax incentive policies, be reviewed to capture the maximum of taxes and review upstream the effective tax system. It was also recommended by way of tax policy to adopt, on the basis of situations, either you renew, revise your tax rules, increase your tax rates, or eliminate tax incentives. And these, in fact, this must be based on the needs of each specific country or region to adopt the option that is best for it and move on with that. We also recommend to internationalize, that is to domesticate in domestic law, the provisions based on a global minimum, because countries should start working at the logistics level to be able to domesticate these provisions. And to do that, WATAF is ready to provide this technical support to member countries of ECOWAS to enhance capacities on transfer pricing, to avoid an erosion linked to mismanagement of free competition, to renegotiate and update existing tax conventions that are not in our favor, and also assist for the evaluation of amounts A to find out whether or not you have to denounce your unilateral measures, and also the transposition of rules in new legislation, and to have a minimum qualified tax, because I said that under the inclusion rule, we have no chance because we have no multinational companies in our countries. But this rule makes it possible, gives you the possibility to have the right to impose a tax. And ECOWAS countries have every interest in adopting a qualified minimum tax already decided by WATAF. By way of conclusion, we recommend to the ECOWAS countries that they continue working more for an effective participation in the elaboration of menus, because in negotiations, in tax negotiations, you should not just sit at the negotiating table, but you must be at the place where the negotiations were conceptualized. This is what we call the menu, because if you sit at the table, a dish will be served to you that was prepared somewhere else, and this may not meet your requirements. Maybe it will not be what you wanted. So you need, countries should get involved, and there should be the political support through ECOWAS and through the African Union. This will be an additional benefit. I thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you very much.
Good morning, Honorable Speaker and Honorable Parliamentarians. I stand on existing protocols. My name is Talatu Aliyu from the Federal Inland Revenue Service. I'm going to be talking on the new global tax rules. That is Pillar 1 and Pillar 2. So I have a content here. I might not follow it strictly because we're constrained by time. The next slide, please. So, Mr. Alpha has spoken extensively on what some of the issues with the current tax systems were. That a company or an enterprise could do business in your jurisdiction, and the tax rules as they exist say if there is no physical presence, then you cannot tax. And so jurisdictions also noticed that a lot of enterprises had taken, exploit the rules, the gaps in our tax laws, and try to mismatch, move profits from one jurisdiction, which has maybe a higher tax rate, to a jurisdiction that has a lower tax rate. This is just to reduce the tax that they will have to pay. So jurisdictions decided after global financial crisis of 2008 that they had to find a way to resolve those issues. And that was why we had the BEPS plans of 2013. The OECD sat together and came up with 15 action plans, which are known as the BEPS, 15 action plans divided into coherence issues, substance, transparency. Those issues were to address mismatches in the tax system. All of those have papers that have been developed, and one of the key issues identified was the issue of taxation of the digital economy. In 2013, jurisdictions could not agree on one rule that would apply. So, as of 2020, work had continued, and we came up with a unified approach, what we call the unified approach, which is now known as Pillar 1 and Pillar 2. So I will take you through those two rules. Go ahead. No, keep going. Next slide. Next. All right. So the two-pillar solution. Pillar 1 is to review the nexus and profit allocation rules. Mr. Alpha had spoken about the taxing rules, attribution rules, how you get to tax an M&E, or how you tax a corporation if he does business within your jurisdiction. Most of those agreements are done by way of tax treaties, and the tax treaties will specify how those profits will be allocated to each jurisdiction. Pillar 1 is a new rule that does not look at presence, physical presence, or what we call permanent establishments, or a fixed base. Because there has been change, there's globalization, and an M&E can earn a lot of revenue from your jurisdiction without even setting foot here. A lot of us in our homes, we have Netflix, which we subscribe to. Netflix might not be here. We buy goods from China through platforms. You order it from your phones, and it comes to your house. Those companies might not have a presence in Nigeria, but you are paying for those goods, and they are coming in. And so what Pillar 1 proposes to do is to give a new nexus where there is substance in your jurisdiction. Pillar 2, which is the second rule, is the rule that wants to ensure that there is a global minimum tax. What does that mean? That every M&E that does business must pay a minimum tax of 15%. So what are some of the problems with the current rules? Like I said earlier, a lot of M&Es do not pay tax in the market jurisdictions where they are, because we have loopholes in our tax rules that they can exploit. Some of those loopholes are actually not illegal. They're just gaps within the law, which it's tax planning. So what do we want to do? We'll use Amount A to allow for taxation of the most profitable M&Es. So the most profitable M&Es will be required to pay tax in the jurisdictions where they have earned or generated those revenues. It is said that we have about 200 billion or more US dollars to be redistributed under Amount A. Another problem that we had is the issue of transfer pricing, which Mr. Alpha has spoken about. There's a problem of comparability. So The treaties will specify that you have to allocate taxing rights. There are attribution rules. How much do I tax in your jurisdiction? Because that MNE will be doing business in several jurisdictions. So how much do I get to tax in Nigeria? And to do that, you have transfer pricing rules. Now, the problem with those rules is that you require comparables to be able to do the test, to carry out functional analysis. Functional analysis is to check what are the functions that that MNE has performed in your jurisdiction, what are the assets that it has employed, what are the risks that it has taken. So those analyses, you would need comparables. And African countries generally do not have good comparables. And so it was one of the issues that was negotiated extensively. It was very important for low capacity jurisdictions that there is a rule that will simplify transfer pricing. So that is what we know as Amount B. Under Pillar 2, we said that there is a shift of profits from low tax jurisdictions and from high tax jurisdictions to low tax jurisdictions. And this impacts the tax basis, but especially more of developing countries such as ours. And so a rate has been fixed for 15% that all MNEs, wherever you do business, should pay a minimum tax of 15%. We would generate 220 billion in additional taxes from Pillar 2. A final issue is on the treaties. He spoke extensively on the issue of tax treaties and concessions that are usually made when negotiations of tax treaties are done. And so, if I am negotiating with country X, for instance, I will typically reduce how much I will tax within my jurisdiction so that when it goes back to his resident state, the resident state will have some profits to tax as well. Because if I tax everything, then those MNEs will not want to come and do business in your jurisdiction. But you're reducing the rates because you believe that the other country is going to tax. But if they do not do that, we're saying there should be a rule to allow me to tax back what I have given. Since I have given you something and you have decided not to take it, then I should be allowed to tax it back. So that is what the subject to tax rule pretends to do. It is a treaty-based rule. We'll look a little bit at some of the details of that rule as we go along. Next. So, I spoke about Amount A. Amount A is the nexus rule that would replace the traditional PE rule or fixed base rule. So, this rule does not require that an MNE must have a presence. A presence could be a shop, could be a location where it does its business from. It could be a company, whatever it is. So we're saying whether or not you have that presence, we will tax if you earn any revenue or income from our jurisdiction. The new rule will give market jurisdictions additional taxing rights over a portion of what is called residual profits. So it is not everything that you tax. Residual profits is determined after a portion has been taken out as its routine profits. So a portion of residual profits that is earned in your jurisdiction will be redistributed amongst the market jurisdictions. Amount B is a set of rules that is to streamline and simplify transfer pricing for low capacity jurisdictions. So it streamlines the application of what is called the arm's length principle to in-country baseline marketing and distribution activities. This is specific for low capacity jurisdictions or also jurisdictions that have problems with comparables. Next. In developing the Pillar 1 rules, there were several building blocks that were discussed. These are some of them. We had the scoping rules, we had the nexus rules, we had issues of elimination of double taxation, tax-based dissemination, tax certainty, unilateral measures, and all of that. So that's all the rules. Next slide. So I'll go a little bit into some of the key rules that I think are important for our discussion today. So, under the scope, who are the companies in scope of this new rule we're talking about under Pillar 1? So Pillar 1 applies to covered groups. So the covered groups are groups who earn euro 20 billion and have profitability, pre-tax profit of greater than 10%. So if you are a group that earns 20 billion euro in any year and profitability of 10%, then you are in scope of Amount A. The rules are more detailed. It tells you how to compute who those companies are in scope. So it looks over a period of 4 years. If you meet that threshold in 4 years, then you're part of the rule. Part of the scoping is some exclusions. Not all companies are in scope of Amount A. You have exclusions for the extractive industry and for regulated financial services industries, because those sectors are already highly regulated. We also have exclusion for what is called autonomous domestic business exemption. That is for businesses that already have a presence. So if you recall earlier, he spoke about the presence rule. So if that company has a presence, it doesn't apply to you. And then, of course, defense sector. The next are the nexus and the quantum rules. The nexus rule is what allows the jurisdiction to benefit from this tax, this additional tax that we're talking about. So there are two nexus. One is 1 million euros for larger jurisdictions and 250,000 euros for smaller jurisdictions. So which jurisdictions are smaller jurisdictions? These are the jurisdictions that have a GDP of less than 40 billion. So if within your jurisdiction an MNE does transactions for up to 1 million euros, or if you're a small jurisdiction, 250,000 euros, you can benefit from the new rules. How much of this residual profit do you get to tax? Because you're not taxing everything. You're sharing 25% of residual profits. So we said residual profit is anything above 10%. So 10% is agreed, is return for routine profits. So anything above 10%, you tax 25% of that. So for example, if that company meets the threshold and has made, let's say, 12% profitability in the year, what you will get to share is 25% of 2. And that will be distributed amongst all the market jurisdictions. The next rules are the rules on marketing distribution safe harbor. This rule is just to look at if in your jurisdiction you have already taxed that MNE. So it is possible that you have taxed by way of some withholding taxes. They will factor in how much you have already taken. And that will be used to cap the portion that you will be allowed to take. So it is known as the double counting rule. The rules do not want you to tax under maybe your domestic law and also under the new nexus rules. Another key component is the issue of tax certainty. So the rules, if you see, based on the scope, applies to companies, MNEs that are very large. Their profitability and their revenue threshold are very large companies. They do not want to have to go to your court and be dragged for several years trying to settle disputes. So a key component of the rule that was negotiated was mandatory dispute binding resolution for Amount A and issues related to Amount A. Now, developing countries also negotiated for an option for elective binding arbitration because we do not want to do mandatory dispute resolution. For elimination of double taxation, so we have said that a portion of residual profits will be redistributed. What that means is that someone is giving up something. So the jurisdictions that are giving up something are jurisdictions that will provide relief. They are known as the resident states. So they will provide relief. And the rules have ensured that it is those that earn the most that will give relief first, and then so on. Next. We have rules for administration, because the rules will apply to several jurisdictions, different countries, and so there are standardized rules for filing, for documentation. You have one lead administration who will be in charge of that process. How will it be done? We have the EOI process, exchange of information, and it will be used for administration of Amount A. Another key component of the rule is the removal of unilateral measures, which Mr. Alpha has spoken about as well. So, in return for this Amount A that you are getting, it is agreed, or countries have agreed, that they will remove what has been termed unilateral measures. So these are measures which are targeted at non-residents or that are not subject to your treaty and other factors. What jurisdictions have agreed to do is that they will remove those measures that are DSTs and relevant similar measures in retrospect to all companies. And they have also made a commitment for the future not to introduce those digital services, taxes, and relevant similar measures. In Nigeria, one of those measures that was analyzed is our significant economic presence rule. It is not a DST, but then the expectation is that there will be a standstill for companies that are within scope of Amount A. You have a body that will review measures to determine whether they are DSTs or relevant similar measures. If it is determined that a measure is, or a jurisdiction has introduced a rule that is a DST, that jurisdiction will lose its allocation of Amount A with a possibility for retroactivity for 3 past years. How will the implementation be done? Jurisdictions are expected to sign on to a multilateral instrument and ratify it to be parties to Amount A. Of course, you have to domesticate the laws, and then there will be guidance provided on how the rules will work under your domestic law. The next rule under Pillar 1 is Amount B. What is it? It is just a rule that seeks to simplify and streamline transfer pricing for in-country baseline marketing activities. What are those activities? They include buy and sell, marketing, distribution transactions, sales agency, and commissioner transactions. There are also exclusions for this rule. All it seeks to do is to give you a rule that is easy to apply, because most of the cases, transfer pricing cases, about 30 to 70% of transfer pricing disputes relate to attribution of profits. So Amount B seeks to increase tax certainty, reduce compliance and administrative costs that come from dispute resolution, and then assist low capacity jurisdictions that do not have local comparables. Next. What are some of the challenges for West African countries? If you look at the scope rules that we've discussed, the revenue threshold is set at 20 billion euros and 10% profitability, meaning that the MNEs that are in scope of this rule are under about 100 worldwide. The inclusion of some tests in the rule will seek to reduce the number of MNEs that are in scope of this rule. There has been negotiated a reduction of this scope to allow for more MNEs to be a part of this rule. But that scope reduction will not apply until after 7 years. And there are conditions which must be fulfilled. And one of those conditions is that there must be successful implementation of the rules. And that is, of course, a cause for concern, because jurisdictions might not agree or come to a consensus on whether the implementation has been successful or not. So where that does not happen, we are stuck with the 20 billion euros threshold. Another issue is the quantum, the amount that will be redistributed to the market jurisdictions. So it is 25%, and based on the example that I gave, you're taking 25% of residual, so 25% of 2 is what will be redistributed amongst all the market jurisdictions. That is actually a very small figure. Another issue is the issue of nexus threshold. The nexus threshold has been hinged on the GDP, and we all know that GDP is not a true test of level of development. So for Nigeria, the GDP will be high, but if you look at the GDP per capita, it's telling a different story. And so that is a problem. One other issue is the issue of unilateral measures. So the rule says that you withdraw a jurisdiction that signs on to the MLC will have to withdraw the right of taxation to all companies. So even MNEs that are not in scope of Pillar 1 rules will be affected. Also, in future, you cannot implement a rule that is similar. Okay, next. So those are just some of the issues. There are quite a number of them. The next is Pillar 2, which is known as the Globe Rules. The Globe Rules are the rules that I said is to ensure a level of minimum taxation for all MNEs. It consists of 2 rules. One is a treaty-based rule known as the subject to tax rule, and then, okay. And then there are other rules which Mr. Alpha has spoken about, the income inclusion rule and the on the tax profit rules. The important thing to know is that the MNEs in scope are MNEs that have turnover of 750 million euros. It is important to know what the rule order will be, because what it pretends to do is to allow you to tax a top-up. So if there's a top-up tax, if it hasn't been taxed up to 15%, then someone gets to tax. Who gets to tax it is determined by the rule order, the income inclusion rule. So the income inclusion rule gives that right to the jurisdiction of the ultimate parent entity. And we know that most of these ultimate parent entities are resident in developed jurisdictions. So that rule will not apply to developing countries such as ours. A backstop rule to that is the under tax profit rule, which will give that right to the constituent entities. Also, we do not envisage that developing countries will earn much from that rule as well. Go on. So we've spoken about this. Next, please. So the subject to tax rule, I said, is a treaty-based rule. It allows you taxation up to 9%. It covers some particular categories of income, interest, royalties, and other services. And all it says is that if it is not taxed up to 9%, that the source state is allowed to tax back under the treaty. So if you have that included in your treaties, it gives you a right to tax back the difference between what you have taxed and 9%. Next. So as I spoke earlier, we said there are 2 rules to the Globe Rules initially, which are the income inclusion rules that allows the resident state of the ultimate parent entities to tax. And we spoke about the other rule, the backstop rule that allows the jurisdictions where constituent entities to tax. So, developing countries realize that what this means is that you will not get a right to tax that top-up. So a new rule was developed which is known as the Qualified Domestic Minimum Top-Up Tax. All this rule allows you to do, if you implement it in your jurisdiction, is to have the first right to tax any top-up that may arise from the computation of the globe rules. However, those rules, if you implement them, must be consistent with the globe rules. There are rules for that. Next. All right. So with the QDMTT, the Qualified Domestic Minimum Top-Up Tax, you would realize that the rule order has shifted. So the QDMTT will come first, which now allows the source jurisdiction to tax first, then the income inclusion rules, which allows the ultimate parent entity jurisdiction to tax, and then you have the backstop rule. Next. What are some of the challenges for West African countries? One is the complexity of the rules. The rules are quite complex. The Amount A rules alone is over 300 pages of detailed rules of how to compute Amount A. Another issue is capacity issue. We have a capacity issue. We do not have the necessary capacity and administrative infrastructure in place to enforce some of these rules. Another issue will be with compliance and reporting, and then most of these ultimate parent entities will not be within our jurisdiction. So what this means is for us is that we will not get to tax most of this M&E. So there is something to collect, but you cannot collect it because of the rule order that prioritizes the jurisdiction of the ultimate parent entity. That is why it is important that we implement a domestic minimum top-up tax rule or a qualified domestic minimum top-up tax, which would allow us to tax any top-up tax. Also, the issue of our incentives. Incentive regime has a way of reducing the tax base, thereby reducing your effective tax rate. And that will mean that there is something to tax, but you're not allowed to tax it. So you have granted incentives to allow MNEs to come and do business in your jurisdiction, but then someone else gets to tax whatever top-up would arise. So I've spoken about some of the issues with our incentives, that reduces the tax rate, and all of that. Next. So, the next question is, what should we do as West African countries? The first will be to conduct impact assessment, to look at, assess how the implementation of these rules will impact on your economy, what you would get, what you seek to get from implementing Amount A rules if you were to decide to sign on, how much in real terms are you going to get? Because you are giving up a lot, what will you get in return? Is it enough to make the decision to sign on to the MLC? Another issue to look at, to consider, is the introduction of the qualified domestic tax. Some jurisdictions say you might decide not to do anything. But if you don't do anything, what it means is that someone else will take what is rightfully yours. We need to also look at ways to strengthen our anti-avoidance tax rules and mechanisms so that we prevent multinational corporations from shifting profits from our jurisdiction, from West Africa, to other developed economies. We also need to review our incentive regimes to see which ones can stay and which ones need to go. There are some incentives that are compatible with the globe rules. You have unlimited loss carry forward, you have accelerated depreciation rules, and tax incentives that are targeted at pure domestic companies. That will not affect your effective tax rate. So those are rules that we should be looking at adopting. Also, we have to look at our negotiated treaties and future treaties. We need to introduce the subject to tax rule within our treaties, which would allow us the right to tax back anything that we have given up in the course of negotiations. So, in conclusion, I would say that the impact on West African economies would generally depend on the factors such as our economic structure, the presence of multinational corporations. However, effective implementation of Pillar 2 rules especially holds significant potential for increased tax revenue to fund government programs. West African countries should, as a matter of urgency, commence engagements with relevant stakeholders to draw up national strategies for immediate streamlining of their tax incentives to avoid ceding their tax base to other jurisdictions owing to the implementation of Pillar 2 rules. Thank you.
I thank all presenters of WATAF. Thank you very much. Now, the general debate is open. MPs who wish to intervene in the debate are requested to register on the intervention list. Help us of that mic there. We want to appreciate the presenters. We thank you sincerely. I believe the papers presented are too technical. If I may take from the submission of Talatu Aliu, who said in one of the documents, it's more than 300 pages. So it means the Parliament received very minimal knowledge of what is contained in that. And I believe there is need for more engagement, more conversation, so that we'll get to the space of what was supposed to be. Ours is to support you to deliver on our behalf so that our region will be better. Thank you very much. We appreciate. With, that members, I believe, are satisfied or need more education. I don't think there's any person that have registered for the intervention. Do you have any? Thank you. You may leave us for now. You are free to take your leave. Respected colleagues, the next agenda is position of the ad hoc committee interim report on recruitment and sensitization campaign funds. The reporters of the ad hoc committee on recruitment and sensitization funds have the floor. The reporters, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I was not in plenary on the 1st of December.
Well, I don't know.
But I have the...
1 minute, my brother. Advisory, whether we could go into closed session for this particular item. Whether we could go into closed session.
Presentation of the report?
Yes, sir.
I think the presentation of the report can be done in plenary. The discussion can be held at the executive session. But if you decide otherwise, it's okay.
What's the issue, sir?
This in what do you call it? No, not in plenary. In executive session.
I think you can, Honorable Abiente, in line with procedures, you can do the presentation in the plenary, then we'll go into executive for the discussion. But then, be very, will I say, restricted.
If it demands that we will just lay the report,
I think so.
we will do that.
Thank you.
Then at the executive session, we do the consideration.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, sir, we have finished our work. I will call on the rapporteur to lay the reports. And I want to report to plenary that 2 reports would be laid. 1 report from the committee of 12. 11 members are on the side of the report that will be led by Soklungbe. We have a minority report from 1 member of the committee. We had also considered that he should lay the report as well. Thank you very much. Soklungbe, lay the committee's report. While Sama, you will lay the minority report. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Commission ad hoc sur le recrutement.
The ad hoc committee on recruitment of staff ID 200120, non-payment of sensitization funds and rejection to pay a lump sum of transport allowance to members of the ECOWAS Parliament. Draft report. Introduction.
Just lay the report, hand it over to the SG or to the speaker. It's not for us to read. That is instruction of the speaker. We would do all of this at the executive session. Thank you.
I don't understand.
It's unfortunate that the ECOWAS Parliament doesn't have a table where the mesh is there that you go now and put their report. So what it's asking you to do is to move directly, give it to the SG, and then we acknowledge that you have played your report. That's all. Thank you. He is the custodian of all our own documents. That's why you should go to him. The institutional memory. Go ahead and make your presentation. I think this committee was constituted in plenary, and we cannot in any way receive the report in secrecy.
We have to we lay the report and do the consideration at the executive session. That's what their own, I think their own pattern is different from our own pattern, but there has to be a convergence.
Yes.
The French pattern is different from the Anglophone, but there has to be a convergence. Because the plenary does not want us to begin to discuss our reports. And we will lay it then at the executive session.
Yeah, we discuss it. Honorable Speaker.
Go
Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, sir. Speaker, sir. Let the, okay.
Colleagues, help me off that mic there. Can we please take our seats? Respected colleagues, many debates as to whether the report should be led in plenary discussion taken, but I must be frank with you, I'm being confronted with this at this moment. So I do not have much knowledge of what are the intrigues. Two, we are now told that we have two reports on the same matter, which is normal in parliamentary business. Majority report and the minority report. It's for the plenary now to consider, or for Parliament to consider and adopt whichever one it comes to discussion. The modality of laying the report, based on the sensitivity of the matter. If you are to lay the report in our normal procedure, it means that you have to give the highlights, your findings, your recommendations, and you stop at that, allow the Parliament maybe to adopt or not to adopt. Do we adopt that procedure, or to be laid to us in secrecy, quietly, and I will go back to plenary for the discussion? I want to allow parliamentarians to take their own decision for themselves. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Monsieur President.
Honorable Speaker, I was a member of that ad hoc committee, and I'm surprised that reference is being made to two reports. I know that yesterday we worked a bit late, and we had the report based on consensus. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Speaker, as it is now, I suggest that we let them read the report openly. Then the discussion could be by private. Because if they submit the report secretly, some people will go back with wrong notion.
Not only that members will go with wrong notion, he just mentioned he was a member of that ad hoc committee. They went into concession, or they had a concession as to what, but now we have gotten another variable report of minority. It tells us that the need to be transparent, and I want us to be transparent. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Muito obrigado. Muito obrigado, Sr.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I was also a member of that committee. And we have one report of the committee, not two reports. The report of the committee is the report of the committee. It should be presented. And it is for plenary to decide or make a proposal. There is one report. There is one report of the committee that was approved by the committee. I don't understand where the confusion is coming from. The one report needs to be presented, and if one MP, member of that committee, would like to make a proposal to the contrary, the plenary is sovereign to take a decision on that. But there is one single report. Thank you.
I think it's coming from members of their own committee. Honorable Seklembe, you still want to intervene? We do not need to debate on how to lay a report. I think that is not correct. The procedure is to lay a report, and that's what the plenary. We do not have to debate on how to lay a report. Thank you.
Monsieur le Président.
Honorable Speaker, I thank you. I am the rapporteur of that committee, and there is one report that we adopted at the committee. To my mind, there is no other report. And according to the procedure, we are to report to plenary, and then plenary will discuss it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think let's restrict ourselves. I want to beg. If there's one report You are a member?
Mr. Speaker, sir.
Mr.
For purpose of clarity before he speaks, every other member of the committee has indicated interest that we have just one committee.
No, it's not correct.
Just one report.
That is not correct.
He offered, Sama offered to present a minority report, and we accepted
let me speak for myself.
that he should bring the minority report to Parliament. So let him bring the report.
No, Sama.
Mr. Speaker, I expressed my opinion to the committee that I did not agree with some of the recommendations. I requested that in the report to the plenary, my opinion should be stated in the report as a minority report, but that was rejected by the chairman. And from all indications, the investigation was transformed into a witch hunt. You know, so I have evidence of that. So I insist that that report should not be laid as it is not proper. Thank you.
Well, the issue is that you cannot say that the report cannot be laid. But in parliamentary practice, you have the right to present your minority report. That is fair. And that is the way it's done. And that's the way it's going to happen. Thank you. So, Kalambe, you may go ahead and lay the report on behalf of the committee. Allow us to proceed, sir. This is simple parliamentary practice.
I have no doubt that it's a simple parliamentary practice, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in as much as we agree to the report, but we'll also be very happy if the minority's view is factored into that particular report. It is a practice. No, that's number one. Number two.
Maybe you didn't hear me. I said he's going to lay his report.
All right. Number two, I also want to know whether the report is signed. If it is not signed, I'm afraid it cannot be proper before
until it is laid before. It's not for me to. Have you ever scrutinized the report before it's laid? You ask people whether they have signed or not signed. Is it a practice in the parliament today?
The practice, they used to give us the report. In my own parliament where I'm coming from, I must have a copy.
Is it the first report we are receiving in this parliament?
I should. I
say, is this a report? I agree. Is this the first report we are receiving?
Well, I'm still learning from your own practice, but from where I came from the practices, I should have a copy of the report before it is properly
they will lay the report before discussion. Every member is supposed to have that copy. Nothing should be done in secrecy. I don't believe in that.
We're watching.
I believe in transparency.
We're watching.
No.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Take it, my brother. I was telling SG why do we have to lay the report in secrecy. I told my this thing. Why should we do that? I don't believe in that. I believe in transparency and accountability too. Thank you. It is fair to allow you to lay. Yeah. You can come and lay your own report.
No, that's all. There's a problem that will be helpful to the laying, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, what I know as best practice is that the minority opinion should be factored into the report. It should be factored into it. It should be my opinion should have been included in the report, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
That's not the way things are done.
No, that's the best practice.
In my own this parliament that I know, if you have a minority report, you write your minority report. As they lay the majority report, you also lay your minority report. No, sir. I will only allow, possibly, after the laying, in consultation with the Bureau, allow you time to come and lay so that we'll all be transparent and be fair. That will be done. Thank you. You have the floor.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I'm now going to present a report, ad hoc committee on recruitment of staff of ID 200-120, non-payment of sensitization funds and rejection to pay a lump sum transport allowance to members of the ECOWAS Parliament. Draft interim report, introduction. In accordance with Articles 33 and 34 of the Rules of Procedure of the ECOWAS Parliament, the plenary set up an ad hoc committee on Friday, 1st of December 2023. The committee's mission was to examine in greater depth certain concerns raised by honorable members on several occasions during their ordinary and extraordinary sessions, which continue to pollute the Parliament's atmosphere. The plenary established this ad hoc committee following the official response of the President of the ECOWAS Commission to Parliament through the Honorable Speaker of Parliament regarding, among other things, the recruitment process for the Principal Parliamentary Affairs Officer and the payment of a lump sum as a transport allowance to members of Parliament instead of the purchase of air tickets by Parliament. The Honorable Speaker requested the committee to begin work immediately and report to plenary on Thursdays and report to plenary. 2. Composition of the committee. The ad hoc committee comprised of 12 members with one each drawn from various delegations. Honorable Ajaratu Traore Coulibaly, Honorable Awaji Inombe Dagomie Abiante from Nigeria, Honorable Senu Soklenke from Togo, Honorable Gabriel Alfredo Fernandez from Guinea-Bissau, Abdoulaye Villan from Senegal, Honorable Shaika Musa Sama from Sierra Leone, Honorable Bile Tunkara from the Gambia, Honorable Orlando Pereira Diaz from Cape Verde, Honorable Aja Fatah Sirion from Liberia, Honorable Isman Idiango from Niger, Honorable Samson Ayi from Ghana, and Honorable Nongbunu Hippolyte Azumi from Benin. Roman 3, terms of reference. The letter of the President of the Commission was selected as one of the items to be considered as part of the deliberations of the ad hoc committee. However, the non-payment of allocated funds for various delegations to embark on sensitization and visibility programs in their respective countries was admitted as the third issue to be considered. Thus, the following items were adopted by the ad hoc committee. Payment of a lump sum as transport allowance to members for the purchase of air tickets instead of the issuance of tickets by Parliament. Determine non-payment of sensitization and visibility funds to various delegations from member states for sensitization and visibility activities and the appointment of the Principal Parliamentary Affairs Officer. Roman 4, ad hoc committee meeting. The committee met on 2nd, 4th, 5th, and 7th of December 2023. During the first meeting, the ad hoc committee, chaired by the Honorable Ajaratu Traore Coulibaly, adopted as agenda the establishment of the committee's bureau, the schedule of the meetings, activities, and lastly, any other business. The committee appointed Honorable Ajaratu Traore Coulibaly as the chairperson, Honorable Awaji Inombe Dogomie Abiante as the co-chair, and Honorable Sekunu Soklembe and Gabriela Alfredo Fernandez as the first and second rapporteurs, respectively. With regard to the schedule, the ad hoc committee agreed to submit the report to the plenary, if possible, on 8 December 2023. The committee invited the following persons as resource persons to assist the committee: the Secretary General, the Director of Administration and Finance, the DAF, the Chief Finance and Budget Officer, and the Legal Advisor of the ECOWAS Parliament. The ad hoc committee also deemed it necessary to invite the Auditor General to comment on the specific issues raised in the 2023 audit report. The reference documents. The committee referred to the following documents during its deliberations: the 2023 audit report, the ECOWAS staff regulations, the rules of procedure of the ECOWAS Parliament, the supplementary act relating to enhancements of the powers of the ECOWAS Parliament, the organigram of the ECOWAS Parliament, the interinstitutional memo, reference ECW/memo/OPEC/01/K IE of 18 January 2023, from the President of the Commission on the appointment of Mrs. Nancy Harvey as Principal Parliamentary Affairs Officer and on the request for payment of a lump sum for members' air tickets.
Délibération.
Deliberation. Non-payment of funds to various delegations for sensitization. Issues raised by the committee. The committee ad hoc raised concerns on why sensitization and visibility funds have not been made available to various delegations during the 5th legislature of the ECOWAS Parliament. The committee wanted to know whether Parliament's budget has always taken these funds into account. The committee also asked about the use of these funds to finance other activities of the Parliament and whether the use was approved. The committee was particularly concerned about the availability of these funds in the 2023 budget, which is currently being implemented. Responses by resource persons. In response to the observation and concerns of the committee, the Director of Administration and Finance explained that budgetary provision for sensitization and visibility has always been captured in the budget. However, the administration is unable to make any disbursements to various parliamentary delegations due to 2018 audit reports which directed against the payments of sensitization funds to members of parliament in the form of advances. She further explained that the forensic report also indicated that sensitization and visibility are activities that should be undertaken as part of all programs of ECOWAS institution. Regarding the issue of access to this forensic report to members of parliament, DAF explained that the report is highly confidential and difficult to access. It is addressed only to heads of institutions with a confidential access code. Furthermore, the Director of Administration and Finance explained that according to Article 74 of the Financial Regulations, the renewal of budgetary allocations carried forward is contrary to financial rules and regulations, except when contracts have been duly signed and are being implemented, and that unutilized funds therefore lapse at the end of each financial year. Again, the Director of Finance indicated that portions of the sensitization funds have been used for communication activities during delocalized and other programs of Parliament in member states, as such communication activities form part of sensitization and visibility programs of the ECOWAS Parliament. Reacting to whether there was any environment authorizing the administration to divert sensitization funds into communication programs, the Director of Administration and Finance explained that Parliament's sensitization and visibility budget line includes communication activities, and that a decision to approve the reallocation of sensitization funds was therefore not necessary. She concluded by urging members of Parliament to work closely with the administration to find a lasting solution for the payment of such funds, Payment of lump sum transport allowance to ECOWAS parliamentarians as against issuance of air tickets. The committee wondered what was preventing the payment of lump sums to MPs to enable them to buy their own air tickets, given that this was done in a recent past. In response to the concern about the payment of a lump sum as a transport allowance, instead of the purchase of air tickets by Parliament, the Director of Administration and Finance pointed out that a recommendation by the Auditor General condemned this procedure. She also reviewed the financial regulations. However, on reading the interinstitutional memorandum ECWSTOK-AG/0856/19/EA from the Office of the Auditor General, dated 26 November 2019, the committee realized that this memorandum, which is based on Article 52 of the staff regulations, is addressed to members of staff and not to honorable members of parliament. Recruitment process at the ECOWAS Parliament. In response to concerns raised by members of the ECOWAS Parliament regarding the recruitment of staff ID 200-120, the President of the ECOWAS Commission, in a letter dated 18 January 2023, through the Office of the Speaker, informed Parliament that the appointment of the staff named above was regular and stands unless it can be proven that the Management Succession Committee, which recruited the state staff, acted against the rule. During the committee's deliberation, it was noted that the Auditor General on page 52 During the committee's deliberation, it was noted that the Auditor General on page 52 of this 2023 audit report expressed concerns that the recruitment of the state staff was contrary to the provisions of Articles 2B and 16.2 of the ECOWAS staff regulations, and further recommended that the Speaker ensures compliance with the provisions of the staff regulations cited above. The citations are stated as follows. Article 2B, all permanent professional positions declared vacant in an ECOWAS institution shall be advertised. Article 16.2 stipulates that appointments under the staff regulations shall be made on a competitive basis. Any appointment made in violation of the provisions of the staff regulations shall be null and void. Roman 7, challenges faced by the committee. The committee encountered the following constraints during the execution of its mandate. The committee sought the attendance of the Auditor General to shed light on the issues cited in this report, but was unable to secure his attendance before the proceedings of the committee ended. The committee was also handicapped by the fact that some reference documents, in this case, the legal accounting audit report on the question of the allocation of sensitization funds could not be produced by DAF. The committee was under time pressure and was therefore unable to interview all the resource persons and stakeholders on the points to be considered. Observations and findings. During its deliberations, the committee made the following observations and conclusions. Concerning the payment of a lump sum as a transport allowance to members of Parliament, the committee noted that the Auditor General's note, which had always been opposed to the honourable members, was based on Article 52 of the ECOWAS staff regulations and did not concern the honourable members. Consequently, there should be no obstacle to the system of lump sum payment to members for the purchase of tickets, because members of the ECOWAS Parliament are in no way affected by the Auditor General's note. Concerning the non-payment of sensitization and visibility funds, the committee noted that the budgetary allocations for sensitization and visibility had always been included in the budgets of the 5th legislature, despite the fact that these funds have never been dispersed to the various country delegations. The committee was informed by DAF that some of these funds were used for communication activities during programs organized by Parliament. The committee was not satisfied as to whether or not sensitization funds were available in the 2023 budget. Concerning the recruitment of staff member ID 200-120, the committee noted that the recruitment of agents contravened Articles 2B and 16.2 of the ECOWAS staff regulations as indicated in the audit report for the year 2023. The recruitment in question is illegal and irregular according to the audit report and the provisions of the articles mentioned. Recommendations. After its deliberations, the committee recommends the following to plenary for consideration and adoption. On the payment of lump sums to the honorable members for the purchase of tickets, the committee recommends that the lump sum payment be restored because the interinstitutional memorandum ECWAS/SPPARL/0856/99EA from the Office of the Auditor General, which was opposed to the members of Parliament, is based on Article 52 of the Staff Regulations and is in no way concern honourable members. On the payment of the allocation of sensitization funds to the various delegations, the committee recommends the payment of these funds to the various delegations for the years 2020 to 2023. So the payment should be scaled, progressively included in the budget. As for 2023, the committee recommends that payment should be made before the end of this session. The committee recommends to the plenary to ensure compliance with Article 2B and 16.2 of the ECOWAS staff regulations with regard to the recruitment of staff member 200-120 and all other staff members. The committee recommends that the member of staff whose recruitment is in question should be redeployed to a post corresponding to his/her area of specialization. The committee also recommends to plenary that the staff member whose recruitment is in question should be assigned to the post for which she has competed. The committee also recommends that the President ensure compliance with Article 16.2 of the staff regulations, which states that appointments under these staff regulations shall be made by competition. Any appointment made in violation of the provisions of the staff regulations shall be null and void. The Commission recommends an in-depth, thorough investigation into the recruitment process for ECOWAS Parliament staff. The conclusion that the committee executed the task assigned to it pursuant to the rules of procedure and the Supplementary Act on the enhancement of the prerogatives of the Parliament. Following these preliminary recommendations, the ad hoc committee would like to submit this interim report for consideration and adoption by plenary done at Abuja, 9 December 2023. Honorable Vice President Awadi, Inombe Dagwomi Abiante, Honorable Soklembe, First Rapporteur. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. In view of the issue raised by our brother, Honorable Sama, I will appeal that we receive the report, keep in view, and then have it printed in all the languages so that all members will have, and allow him the opportunity also to lay his minority report printed in all languages for all members to access, and then we'll fix a date for the debate before the end of the plenary. This is my only request to the Parliament. Please. Thank you. Adopted? Thank you. You still want to talk?
Yes, I want to thank you for that, Mr. Speaker. I will try to have a report on Monday, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
Thank you. I want to beg of us. Let us not overheat the system. allow the system to happen and flow transparently. And that's the only way we can have peace in our parliament. I beg of us, let this no small thing tear us apart. I beg. It's a simple parliamentary procedure. Allow him lay his minority, let every member have access to the information, and then we'll fix a day for the debate. I think it's simple. Thank you. You still want to comment, sir? Okay. You have the floor.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I hope you're listening to me. We have listened to the report of the ad hoc committee that was set up by plenary. Mr. Speaker, I would not want this same plenary, even though accepting minority report is a part and parcel of democratic principles, but to say that the quality of the report that we've listened to just now would not enable us to allow an individual in an isolated manner to allow us venture into other aspects of the same report. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much for the intervention. But it's a democratic terms that the majority will have their way, and then the minority will have their say. Let them, we have to, but I don't want to believe so. It depends on what possibly is going to prop up. What he may prop up may overturn. There's likelihood. It's a committee that's sat, but the larger majority is here, the parliament. I don't know any of the views. I'm hearing it for the first time, not even a single conversation, and I have not had any conversation with him, so allow him the opportunity to do that. We'll have it on Monday. Maybe by Tuesday, we'll fix for our listening. Thank you very much. May God help. With this, thank you, adopted. Colleagues, we have come to the end of today's program. What? Respected colleagues, the agenda for plenary sitting is exhausted. The next plenary sitting will take place on Monday, 11 December 2023 from 10 a.m. It will be devoted to the consideration and adoption of the reports of the Standing Ad Hoc Committee, Ad Hoc and Joint Committee on the reports of the oversight missions, and also to receive the mandatory report on the recruitment and payments of sensitization committee, ad hoc committee. Thank you very much. Sitting stand adjourned.
Je vais faire une photo ici, là. Good. Huh? Ah, okay. Good.